G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle. Recently I've been working on my Battlefleet Heresy forces. In particular here we have my Thousand Suns fleet. Now if you've been listening to the show or watching it for several years, you'd know that Battlefleet Gothic was one of the first games I really got into with Games Workshop. And if they were to bring it back out, it's one of the few things I would actually go out and buy straight off the shelf. Which, yes, if you've listened to us for any length of time, you would know what kind of a statement that is on this channel. Now, this particular fleet uses mostly Shapeways 3D printed miniatures. These are Heresy Strike Cruisers, or Heresy Cruisers I believe they're called, the smaller ones. And the battle barges in the back are listed as Heresy Barges, I'm pretty sure. So if you're looking to find them on Shapeways, that's what you'll find. The Grand Cruiser is an original repulsive Grand Cruiser in white metal that my friend Colin graciously gave me. So I guess we'll start with that one. So this is a white metal cruiser. And what I've done is tried to have those sort of burnt tones in with the metallic reds. I've replaced all the Chaos Iconography with etched brass plates, filed it off the bridge completely and replaced it with Thousand Suns Iconography, and then sort of made a cartouche system, filling it with hieroglyphic transfers off the Thousand Suns transfer fleet, which goes all the way around the little winglets. That was a lot of work. But I think it works out. Obviously it's a different shape to the rest of the fleet, being a original Chaos Grand Cruiser, so it's a very sharp, angular, aggressive style, whereas the battle barges and such are a little bit smoother. But I like the fact we have very pointy prows on the Strike Cruisers and the Grand Cruiser, and then it sort of rounds off and gets a bit more blocky on the larger ships. With the smaller ships, they lose a lot of detail if you don't buy the really nice resin, and obviously I didn't buy the very nice resin because I bought them and I was like, oh yeah, these look like they'll do just fine. I didn't really know what the quality was going to be like. In hindsight, I'd have bought the nicer resin, but it costs a bit more money. Same thing, use the darker burnt tones in my base coat. It's all done with a gold base coat. Tiny bit of silver at like the very tip to really bring it out, and a really dark mix of just black and gold to make the dark areas, and then that's brushed over, airbrushed. But actually I did hand paint one of these. Well, you can airbrush or hand paint, doesn't really matter, you'll get the same result on Battlefleet ships with Tamiya clear red. And then once the red has set, then I've washed it with a white spirit and black oil paint wash. And then lastly went in, obviously putting some decals and stuff, and matte varnished the whole miniature down, which gives it this nice flatter metallic red instead of a super glossy one. So each of the Strike Cruisers, I've got an emblem or symbol on the prow. So Legion symbol on the prow, and then up towards the rear in front of the bridge, I've got a chapter icon, chapter or fellowship, or cult, or whatever you want to call it. So, you know, you've got like the Uraeus, which is the Cobra, which is like a command one, or the Sedjat, they call it. Different types of scarabs, Legion Iconography. The Anubis is for the sort of the Jackal cult, the Death cult, which look after like the Legion Dreadnoughts and stuff. So in my background, this battle barge, for instance, is Anubis Jackal cult with the mortuary pyramid, and is carrying my dreadnoughts for my Thousand Suns forces. And on the pyramid, you probably won't see it in the video, but there's actually Legion Iconography. Just hard to see, but it's on there. My way of making the three different strike crews, the battle barges different, was to put pyramids on two of them. So I kept them mostly the same on the flagship is basically stock. All I did was, with great effort, I'm not sure exactly what plastic they've used on this, but it was quite difficult to file and cut away even with metal tools. This here had this sort of ribbed pattern, which I got rid of and replaced it and did this completely out of scale, but I think cool looking marble effect with the gold Legion icon over the top. This is of course the Legion's the flagship of this particular fleet. So this is going to be my Admiral in most games. Then we've got the sort of second in command fleet ship, I guess, which is where I put the first pyramid. So just for some scale, that pyramid's almost twice the size of the Great Pyramid at Giza in height and width. So that kind of gives you an idea of just how damn big these ships are. If you've ever seen the Great Pyramid in person, that will give you an idea of the size of this sort of ship. It is literally a city flying through space. The iconography on the different battle barges, of course, is, you know, you've got your Legion numerals and Legion icons and stuff, but I've tried to mix it up, make them very individual in style. Obviously the flagship it's got these large marbled panels, therefore I've tried not to put too many decals on it. Whereas, say, this one, the Hatshepsut, I've used a bit more iconography, more decals, that kind of thing. So, ship naming conventions and iconography. Well, there's a few different sources. First, we've got the book 7,000 Suns, Legion icons and numerals and stuff, and all the fluff that talks about them. There's that. But a big thing is I have a huge library of books, and in one of them is this pretty good encyclopedia on ancient Egypt here, by generally edited by Helen Strudwick. And in it, go through and talk about a lot of the different Egyptian pharaohs and such. If I can find the right sections, of course. Get a lovely different list of different pharaohs, and anyway, it goes through and devotes different pages to different characters. So with my ships, the only ones that have names after pharaohs are the Grand Cruiser and the battle barges. Obviously, I'm not going to name each of the strike cruisers after a pharaoh. There's plenty of pharaohs to pick from, but they're just a strike cruiser. So we have the Tutmose, which is the flagship, named after Tutmose III. His mother/stepmother, I guess, would be Hatshepsut, which is this one over here, who was the first female pharaoh of ancient Egypt. She was the queen, and when her husband, Tutmose I, I think it was, died, she took over. And the last one, with the largest pyramid by far, I've named Khufu after the guy who built the Great Pyramid. That is, if you believe that humans built it, or if you're into those ancient aliens videos or something, I don't know what to tell you. And the last ship here, I've named the Akhenaten after Tutankhamun's father, who was a radical and a bit of a weirdo. Tried to introduce monotheism to ancient Egypt, worship of a sun god and one god alone, instead of the whole pantheon of weird animal-headed gods. Didn't last past his reign, we'll just say that. Was not popular. But I thought, being the odd one out, that would be a great little look for it. If I was to add more Grand Cruisers or such, I'd probably go for Old Kingdom Pharaoh names, because they're less impressive, smaller vessels. So something like Djoser, for example, who built the first, united the first empire, I believe. That kind of thing. But yeah, that's my naming conventions. So what am I going to do next? Well, I need to add an armoured cruiser, because most of the background fluff for this fleet comes from the actual games I've played with it. So I captured a Space Wolf armoured cruiser playing Zomnatalis at one campaign. I don't know what a Space Wolf armoured cruiser is. I can tell you what an armoured cruiser is in real human 19th and 20th century terms, but I don't know what such a thing is in Battlefleet Gothic, whether it's some sort of Grand Cruiser or maybe just a large regular cruiser, I'm not sure. So I have to add one of those. Another thing I'm going to do is add escorts. A couple of monitors, but yeah, some different escorts to the force. So I want to try and maintain this very heresy era aesthetic. So again, the strike cruise and battle barges here, they don't have the squared off blocky features of the 40k marine fleets. These are 30k Great Crusade era fleets. These are the sort of ships that Chaos took with them into the Eye of Terror after the Siege of Terror. And so that's why these guys are going to have these pointy prows and such, and I want to try and stick to that theme. Anyway, so rules wise, obviously got to try and decide. I'll use these as Crusade era strike cruisers, which are a light cruiser stat line. They've only got 1 shield, 6 hull, but they've got a ridiculous amount of ordnance firepower. They have bombardment cannons. They've got 4 firepower to the port and starboard, as well as 3 dorsal firepower, which can fire to forward, starboard, or port. Obviously, there's a ridiculous amount of firepower on a light cruiser, and they can do a 90-degree turn. So, yeah, bombardment cannons. I mean, they're glass cannons. 1 shield, low amount of hull at only 6. I mean, by the time you take 3 damage, you're gonna have so little firepower left. But, you know, it's cool, it's fun. It's just a good old close-up Dakar machine. I think the only ship that's actually got torpedoes at the moment is the Grand Cruiser. Everything else, I think I'm running Thunderhawks on the barges. Maybe swap them out for torpedoes? I don't know. I hate keeping track of torpedoes. Just one extra thing to move across the table, and something that I always seem to end up almost flying into. Yeah, because obviously when you fire a spread of torpedoes, they slowly work their way across. Each turn, they move forward. So if you've got a ship that's, you know, somewhere back here and it fires, and then one of my other ships cuts across the front, has a nasty habit of getting in the way of them. We obviously don't want that to happen. So yeah, points wise, I think they work out to like 165 each, but I'd pay the extra 15 points for a second shield and go up to 180. So obviously there's 7 of those there at 180 points each. It's the better part of 12, 13, 1280, 1300, something like that. In strike cruisers, then of course a couple hundred points each for each battle barge and the Grand Cruiser. So it's probably a better part of 2,500 points there, maybe a bit more. That's a pretty good starting fleet. Cost wise, going off Shapeway, you could make a fleet like this for under $100. So yeah, pretty worth it. Pretty worth it. I'm lucky in that, yes, the detail is nowhere near as great as it could be. There's like a porosity almost to the surface. These ships are hollow, by the way, but there's like a slight weird texture on the surface. Can't quite describe it, like a bubbly surface texture. From the type of material I used to print them, because I used the cheaper material. These 2 were in black, and this one was printed in white, just to see if there was a difference. No, they both came out the same way. You definitely have to go to like the fine detail, more expensive one if you really wanted that nice crisp detail, but the thickness of the clear red going over the top has meant that it sort of has smoothed out and filled in those gaps a little bit and filled in the pores. So yeah, pretty happy overall. I will get some battle reports later on in the year. I'll head up to the Eye of Horus event that they'll run probably in September, provided everything goes to plan. And I'll probably get in some games with like Tim and Leadham and some people up there, and actually show off some Battlefleet Gothic, but it probably won't be any games before then. Yeah, that's about it. Any questions, please hit me up in the comments below. Make the outer circle. Thank you all for watching this quick little episode, and I'll see you all next time.